I'll take the DNA test, I said. My mother smiled like she had already won. Then I added, but when the results come back, Mom, you're going to have to explain why you already knew what they would say. Her smile disappeared. My name is Claire Morgan. I was 34, married to Daniel, and the mother of a 7-year-old boy named Ethan. Ethan was the sweetest child I had ever known. He loved dinosaurs, asked 100 questions a day, and had a habit of leaving little drawings on my kitchen table before school. My mother, Linda, had never been particularly warm toward him. She was polite. She bought him birthday gifts. She smiled for family pictures. But there was always something behind her eyes whenever she looked at him. I didn't understand it until the afternoon she called me to her house and placed a thick envelope on the dining table. I've changed my will, she said. I stared at her. Okay. You're not going to like it. My father, Robert, sat beside her, looking uncomfortable. Mom pushed the envelope toward me. I want a DNA test done on Ethan. For a moment, I thought I had misunderstood. What? A DNA test. Why? Because I need to know he's really your husband's son. My face went hot. Daniel wasn't there. Ethan was at school. I looked at my mother as if she had suddenly become a stranger. Mom, what are you talking about? She folded her hands. I've decided Ethan shouldn't receive anything from my estate unless his parentage is confirmed. My stomach twisted. You think my son isn't Daniel's? I think I have questions. What questions? She wouldn't answer. Instead, she said, if you refuse the test, Ethan gets nothing. I stared at the woman who had held me when I was sick as a child. You're using my son to threaten me? I'm protecting what belongs to this family. I stood up. You don't get to insult my child and call it protection. Dad finally spoke. Linda, this has gone too far. She turned toward him. No. It hasn't. Then she looked back at me. Take the test, Claire. If you're so confident, what's the problem? I felt anger rising in my chest. But underneath the anger was something else. A question. Why was she so determined to test Ethan? I took a slow breath. Then I said the words that made her expression change. Fine. I'll take it. Mom blinked. You will? Yes. I picked up my purse. But I'm not doing this for your will. I looked directly at her. I'm doing it because I want the truth too. I had absolutely no idea how much truth was about to come out. 2 days later, Daniel and I took Ethan to the clinic. I explained almost nothing to my son. He was too young to understand why adults sometimes turned simple things into complicated problems. The test was quick. Afterward, Daniel sat beside me in the car. I still can't believe she asked this. Neither could I. Daniel squeezed my hand. Whatever happens, Ethan is my son. I know. But Claire. I looked at him. What? Your mother seemed very sure that the results would prove something. That sentence stayed in my mind. My mother hadn't asked a question. She had acted like she already knew the answer. 3 weeks later, the results arrived. I opened the envelope at our kitchen table. Daniel stood beside me. I read the first line. Then the second. Then I stopped. Daniel whispered, "What does it say?" I looked up at him. The test confirms Ethan is your biological son. Daniel exhaled. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt suspicious. Because if the result was exactly what everyone expected, why had Mom fought so hard to get it? I called her. I have the results. There was silence. And? Ethan is Daniel's son. Mom didn't sound surprised. She simply said, "Good." That was all. I frowned. You don't sound relieved. I am. No, you're not. She hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about her expression. The next morning, I received an email from an unfamiliar address. There was no message. Only one attachment. A scanned document. My mother's old will. I opened it. And my heart stopped. Ethan had been listed as a beneficiary. Not just once. His name appeared in 3 different sections. Someone had removed him from the new will. But why? I printed the document and drove to my mother's house. She opened the door and froze when she saw the papers in my hand. Where did you get that? That's not important. I held up the old will. You originally left Ethan money. Mom's face changed. Things changed. Why? Because I changed my mind. No. I stepped closer. You were willing to erase a 7-year-old child from your will, accuse his father of being unrelated to him, and demand a DNA test. She said nothing. Why? Finally, she whispered, because your father told me something. I looked toward Dad. He wasn't in the room. What did Dad tell you? Mom sat down. Years ago, before Ethan was born, Daniel had a medical test. I frowned. What kind of test? A fertility test. My heart began pounding. Mom continued. The doctor told him he might have trouble having children. I stared at her. That doesn't prove anything. I know. Then why did you do this? Mom looked down. Because someone sent me an anonymous letter. She pulled a folded piece of paper from a drawer. It claimed Daniel couldn't possibly be Ethan's biological father. The letter said I had been unfaithful. It even included a photograph of me standing beside another man outside a restaurant. I recognized the man immediately. My old college friend, Marcus. The photograph was real. The story wasn't. Marcus had been helping me choose a birthday gift for Daniel. Mom had believed the photograph. But then came the part that shocked me. The letter wasn't anonymous. There was a return address. My mother's own lawyer had received another copy. I took the paper. Who sent this? Mom shook her head. I don't know. I thought the mystery was finally over. Then Dad walked into the room. He looked at the letter. His face went pale. Linda, he said quietly, you need to tell her everything. Mom looked at him. Robert. Now. The room became silent. Dad sat down. I found out who sent it. I stared at him. Who? He looked at me. Your sister. My heart dropped. I had no sister. I had one brother. Evan. My younger brother. He was 40 years old and had always been the favorite child. I couldn't speak. Dad continued. Evan has been asking your mother for money for years. Mom closed her eyes. He owes a lot. How much? Dad hesitated. More than $80,000. I felt sick. So he wanted Ethan removed from the will. Dad nodded. Evan believed that if Ethan wasn't a beneficiary, your mother would leave his share to him. I couldn't believe it. My brother had tried to destroy my family's trust because he wanted more money. But there was another twist. Dad reached into his pocket and handed me his phone. There is one more thing. He played a recording. It was Evan's voice. I heard him speaking to Mom. Just make her take the test. If Ethan isn't included, everything comes back to me. Then Mom's voice. But what if Claire finds out? Evan answered. She won't. She always trusts family. I felt tears fill my eyes. Not because of the inheritance. Because he was right. I had trusted them. My mother had believed the lie. My brother had created it. And my father had known enough to stop it but had stayed silent for too long. I turned to Mom. You didn't just question my son's identity. She looked at me. You questioned me. I was scared. You chose to believe a piece of paper over your own daughter. Mom began crying. I was wrong. I wanted to forgive her. Part of me desperately wanted to. But another part remembered the way she had looked at me when she demanded the test. Like I was guilty until proven innocent. I told her I couldn't pretend it hadn't happened. Then I took the DNA results, the old will, the anonymous letter, and the recording to an attorney. We didn't sue Evan. We didn't need some dramatic courtroom revenge. Instead, the attorney helped my mother create a completely new estate plan with independent witnesses and strict protections against anyone pressuring her. Evan received nothing. Not because I demanded it. Because Mom finally made her own decision. As for Ethan, she restored him as a beneficiary. But I told her something she never expected. I don't want my son growing up believing love is measured by money. She nodded through her tears. I understand. Months later, Mom came to our house. Ethan ran to her. She knelt down and hugged him. Then she looked at me. I owe you an apology. I nodded. Yes, you do. She didn't argue. That mattered more than I expected. Evan eventually admitted what he had done. He claimed he had been desperate. Maybe he was. But desperation doesn't give anyone the right to destroy another person's reputation. And my mother learned something too. A will can decide where money goes. It cannot decide who your family is. The DNA test my mother demanded was supposed to keep my son out of her will. Instead, it exposed the real secret. Ethan was exactly who I had always known he was. My son. Daniel's son. And, despite everything, still my mother's grandson. The test didn't destroy our family. The lie almost did. What saved us was the truth. And I learned something I will never forget. When someone asks you to prove your love by accepting humiliation, don't confuse obedience with loyalty. Sometimes saying yes to the test, the question, or the confrontation is exactly how you finally discover who was telling the truth all along.